I'll do a quick little intro of myself. My name's Neil Kane. I'm a certified financial planner that doubles up as a federal employee benefits consultant. I've been working as a financial advisor for 19 plus years. It's really actually 20 now. Started in '05. And I am local to the DC area. I grew up in Rockville, attended Towson, finished up in Georgetown. So I'm a DC native. Go Skins! Very happy to see them advance on, and we're gonna have a crazy game here coming up this weekend. But let's talk a little bit about what we're doing today, because there is a lot of folks that are having some anxieties in terms of their jobs, right? We understand that. We're going to be talking a little bit about really how things were intended to go for federal employees, what has changed in this kind of retirement outlook that specifically impacts federal employees, and then how can we kind of build the most out of our retirement given those facts, right? And so, in order to understand that, we got to go way back, right? Way back when the federal pension system was under CSRS. You may remember that. That was a era back before 1987 that if you were blessed to be in the system, you were walking away with up to 80% of your salary, your high three salary, right, as your pension. Um, One of the other beautiful aspects of the CSR pension is that it tracked the consumer price index implicitly, and it began accruing immediately after retirement with no delays. So what is the consumer price index? It's essentially a measurement stick for inflation, right? So that's where the government gets its statistics from when it says inflation has increased by so and so forth. The cost of living adjustment for CSRS pensions would track that, right? So that allowed for less of a relying of investments on the TSP and other investment portfolios for retirees during this era. And this was the benefit my grandfather received after he retired from USAID. And let's be honest, his TSP was very little. He actually had next to nothing in his TSP. At this point in time, there was no matching in the TSP, and it was G fund only at one point. Then C fund came, and then the other three funds came after that. But it was very little contribution to a retirement plan. And so the concept there was income would likely decrease by a smidgen in retirement, but as sure as heck wouldn't increase in retirement. And we're going to build on that thought. How could income increase in retirement for a federal retiree? How's that possible? Right? We're going to talk about that. The additional part was that this philosophy that income would decrease or not go up in retirement built the idea that tax deferred investing was the best strategy. It additionally kind of built on the back of federal income tax brackets would likely not move higher in retirement, right? They would at least stay the same, and therefore there'd be a smaller amount of income, and therefore I should use traditional TSP plan to invest my money. Now, fast forward to now, we've got several things at play. One, we're living longer, right? I know a question came in. I want to address that. I see that the question came in. I don't see the question. I have to actually go to a whole new box to see your question. But I'm going to move through these slides to make sure everyone gets in within an hour, gets out. So I'm going to do the Q&A at the end, and I'll go back to the very beginning and just do your questions that way. So as kind of folks are aging into retirement, they're living longer, right? In fact, 1 out of 2 people in a couple, right, in a household will live to 90. That is the likelihood now. Very different than several decades ago. Additionally, there is a reduction to the computation of about 50% from a FERS pension versus a CSR pension, right? So that is an additional downside pension reduction risk. And the cost of living adjustment for FERS does not keep up with inflation. It's in fact built to not track the CPI index, right? There's also a delay in cost of living adjustments to your pension, which also hurts that pension. So what does that do? That builds more investment reliance. That builds a much greater investment reliance to the TSP. And what you're going to see when you're actually in retirement is your figures of what you started off withdrawing from, maybe you needed $30,000, I'm just giving you an example, is going to actually look like this. You're going to need more and more money from your TSP as time goes on. And that is simply because of the way that your income is built in terms of your pension, right? There are also some additional risk components. Now that the pension system switched to FERS back in the 80s, it also began to have a component that was tied to your Social Security. Folks in that old system didn't receive Social Security, right? Folks in this new system receive a Social Security benefit. That's great, but there's issues in the Social Security Administration, and we're not exactly sure how that benefit will be funded a decade or 2 decades from now. Okay. So these are part of the bigger concerns in this new era of retirement. Additionally, to add to that, there are some healthcare considerations. Healthcare is rising way higher than inflation, almost double. So if you have an inflation rate at 3, you can expect maybe an inflation rate for healthcare at 6%. Now, we do have great benefits of federal employees, and we have the option to add Medicare Part B to that. I'm going to show you why there are some issues when you add Medicare Part B in terms of a financial element, and I'll give you some ideas around planning for that so you don't get caught with a higher premium. But bottom line is your health insurance benefit, FEHB, whatever you choose, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, whatever it is, plus Medicare Part B, even though you stack those two together in retirement, they're not going to cover for really custodial care. Medicare Part A will cover up to a certain amount of days for custodial care. But at the end of the day, if you need nursing home or you need custodial care at home by a nurse, right? That's not going to be covered really for an extended period under any of those options. And that's where it gets expensive. Lastly, it's taxes. There is not a secret going on that there is a major underfunding to the federal government, right? Which is a problem in itself, right? We have a major deficit. We've been running a deficit for a very long time. This was exaggerated in 2020, right, where we just saw a hockey stick of that deficit. And at some point, we are a strong believer that tax rates will have to be lifted, personal income tax rates would have to be lifted to tackle that issue. Now, the current administration doesn't desire to do that. So we may have 4 years of this extended lower tax rates, but our concern is that this doesn't eventually get fixed and tax rates have to go up. So we're going to examine that as we kind of go through the rest of this presentation and how that can all kind of trickle into whether you're on the right path for retirement in terms of thinking, or do we need to adjust course a little bit? So let's first start off with our pension as it stands right now. As federal employees, we are under the following guidelines. If we retire under the age of 62, or we meet the age of 62 but have less than 20 years of service, we're going to get 1% for every year you work times the high 3 average salary, right? Do the quick math on that. We retire with 30 years of service, but we're under the age of 62. We're at 30% of our high 3 salary. Now, in order to increase that number, we must work until at least 62, and we must have at least 20 years of service to go with that. And essentially, what happens there is we get a 10% bonus to our pension. Okay. So if there's anyone on the fence, uh, should I retire at 60? Should I retire at 61? We've seen that before. It's like, oh, no, no. If you've got the 20 years of service by 62, let's get you that extra 1 year of work, or maybe let's even consider that extra 2 years of work, because what you're going to experience there is not only that 10% bump up, then you have those extra 1 or 2 years going in. You shoot up by 12, 13, like 13% in those scenarios, right? In just a year or two of work. That's a significant increase to that baseline income in those scenarios, especially if we're a little uncertain about the income to expense ratio in retirement, right? So when um, when we look at cost of living adjustment, when we look at the cost of living adjustment, we got to examine that and look at exactly how this thing works to figure out, well, why am I exactly pulling more money out of my TSP as years go on, right? Well, let's look at how it actually is built to increase. One, it doesn't start increasing at 62. So if you're on that fence of retiring at 60 because you got that 20 years of service met, or earlier at 57, right? Which you can't do if you got the 30 years of service met, you're not going to see a cost of living adjustment until 62. So this is problematic. If you're initially starting off retirement and you're not getting any sort of increase to your pension, it's going to feel smaller. It's not going to have any sort of lift at all. But then as we go into retirement, we're essentially giving up 1% for every tick up in inflation. And what I mean by that is generally inflation is hovering around the 3% level. That's been a historic level. It's actually north of 3. And if we're receiving -1 of that, we can generally start to think that our income is going to feel less or more deficient as we go into retirement. And in fact, you could expect that 20 years into retirement, okay, your income from your pension feels like 20% less. Is it mathematically 20% less? No, because you're getting a cost of living adjustment, right? So visually, it looks like it's going up. But if all expenses are going up at a rate higher than that, 1% a year for a 20-year period, you just lost 20% of your purchasing power. Okay. We could go on and on about losing purchasing power because there's other factors at work that are making us lose our purchasing power, which is why you've seen the price of assets and other things like gold and all those things increase, right? Because of this underlying understanding that our purchasing power is being diminished. But it also happens in your pension. So we've got to be very, very understanding of those dynamics of work so that we can protect ourselves while we're in retirement and make sure that we're preserving our purchasing power. Okay. So lastly, the benefit of Social Security is an equally important benefit to your retirement stack. It's actually one of the three legs of the stool. I'm sure you heard that before, but can we fully rely on this benefit? Listen, anybody that tells you that there's a solution that's going to fix this and they know what's going to happen, they don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know that if this isn't fixed by the year 2035, you will only receive 75% of your benefits. And why is that? Well, because there will still be people working. That's what will fund your 75%. But it's this trust fund that is literally getting subtracted and subtracted and subtracted. There's not enough going in to fund that trust fund. So what's going is it's actually running a deficit on the trust fund. It's set to extinguish by the year 2035. So really, what will be the benefits that you get as on your Social Security benefits? It's what's coming in, There's no bank account anymore. That's been pulled out. So this is an important issue. This is not a doom and gloom presentation, but you must think about what are your retirement risks. That's what the name of this presentation was for. And now we must think about how we address those risks, right? Because when you set up a good retirement plan, you're not just going with the baseline case, which is status quo. You're going with, well, what happens if some of these things go wrong, right? How is my success rate of my retirement plan impacted by a change to something that was maybe unforeseen or something like this that was foreseen? Okay. So those are some of the issues that we're concerned about around your benefits as a federal employee. Now let's kind of go into some of the risks that we see in terms of tax rate risk. We're seeing tremendous amount of wealth being stored in traditional TSP plans. That's all well and good, and that is to aim against this decrease to purchasing power. And that is a fantastic thing to see. But when it's all positioned in the traditional side of the TSP, we know that those taxes have to be paid later on. And when we start to see the current tax brackets, right, of today, 2025, versus the prior tax brackets of 2018, we can see a dramatic difference to not only the tax rates, but we can see a dramatic difference to the actual income in those brackets, right? So, we could just look at this 24% bracket and look at it compared to what it was and know that the current ones are way more advantageous to us than what they were prior to the changes, okay, in terms of individual taxes. But we can additionally understand that the tax rates in the green box there, those were the tax rates from previous presidents prior to that. So you had Obama, Bush in those tax brackets. Prior to that, Clinton actually had even higher rates than what you see on the board. And again, this is not a political presentation, but you just have to understand that these tax rates change based on administration, and that the current ones that you see aren't locked in forever. So they could pull the plug, a rug underneath us, and all of a sudden, all that money we banked in our traditional TSPs, tax rate has gone up. So that is a tremendous risk for folks that are carrying tremendous wealth in their TSP plans, specifically on the traditional side. So the question is, okay, I get it, Neil. I get it that the old presidents had, an average tax rate, in modern history that was higher than the current ones. But how does that compare to going all the way back? So we ran a actual analysis of what a $200,000 joint earner or a $100,000 individual earner, adjusted for inflation, by the way, would have paid in tax rates. This is all over the board, okay, because there's been some dramatic shifts to tax rates, right? But you can see at least a steady line. Like if I were to build at least a steady line into this, like we're kind of at an average tax rate for about 26 or so percent, right? For those earners. Right now, that's about 22. Okay. So the question is, can the federal government operate at a dramatic deficit with historically the lowest tax rates we've seen? We're in the camp of likely not, right? Because if you start to look at the facts, and the facts are just simply that we are underfunded in our liabilities, right? We can understand that if 96% of every tax dollar goes to just four things now, and the interest on our national debt is increasing by the day, right? Because we have higher interest rates right now to combat inflation. And so therefore, the government's got to pay a higher interest rate on its own debt, which is at record levels. This is something that, if something isn't done, just continues to spiral northward, right? And that is what's forecasted. So our concern is that there may have to be some dramatic changes in the future to get that debt in a serviceable situation. And this is not uncommon for developed countries, oh gosh, missed an R, countries to have. Okay. When you look at all of these developed European countries, their tax rates are approaching the 50% mark. Okay. They're not an emerging country. Okay. And as developed countries start to need more money for services, for the aging population, for infrastructure that's aging, you will see this is nothing but a situation where there needs to be more participation in tax dollars from individuals, okay? Corporations as well. But that is truly what the concern in terms of the tax rate risk is. And the congressional budget actually did a study on this. And in order to keep us solvent in the year 2050, and this looks just mind boggling in terms of tax rate. So right now, our lowest tax rate is 10%, our middle tax rate is 24, and our highest tax rate is 37. The the Heritage Foundation did a study that said that by the year 2050, the lowest tax rate would have to be 19, the middle would be 47, and the highest would be 66. I mean, those are jaw-dropping numbers, but that's really what we're looking at if there's not some sort of fix to this. And there is no fix beyond, lower spending, but higher taxes as well. So these are some of our concerns when it comes to retirement risk, right? It's not just the stock market dropping. We could throw that one in there too, but we must look at least what we know right now, okay? What we know are risks. We don't know when the next recession will come. That's not what this presentation is really about, but we can avoid some risks on that side if we're over leveraged to the stock market. Okay. So we're going to talk about that in this distribution planning here coming next, because that's also part of setting up a rock solid retirement plan. So, what is distribution planning? Well, number one, it's distributing your assets according to the most tax efficient way that you can possibly do that when you are in retirement. And there's three main categories inside the tax buckets of your investments. Okay. One is taxable investment accounts. So, what are these? These are like brokerage accounts, stocks, bonds, mutual funds that lie outside of a retirement plan. How are they taxed? Well, they're taxed every year. Typically, you're going to pay taxes on the dividends. You're going to pay taxes on any capital gains and distributions from the funds. You're going to pay taxes on interest. So you get taxed as you go. You get a 1099 at the end of the year that shows you your dividends, capital gains, interest from your investments that reside outside of a retirement plan. So you kind of bleed taxes as you go there. Okay. Tax deferred, very different. No bleeding of taxes while you're accruing, right? You pay taxes when you withdraw, like in a lump sum almost. You're paying taxes for all of that. You're paying taxes for what you put in, plus you're paying taxes for the growth of that asset. So there can be a tremendous amount of taxes in the end for the federal government in a tax deferred investment account simply because the growth of markets and things have been so strong. So what participates in that? Examples of that are the traditional savings plan, traditional 401k plans, as well as traditional IRAs, as well as annuities. Those are all tax deferred category investments. Now, on the far right here, we have the tax-free accounts. This money is the principal is not only after tax and tax-free, the growth of that account gets a tax-free treatment as well. The examples of that are going to be your Roth TSP, Roth IRAs, and there are some life insurance policies where the growth of those assets do experience tax-free growth, and then there are loans that are taken from it. We're not a proponent in trying to give you any advice to buy life insurance, but there are some components that experience that same level. But it's a little more complex when you're talking about that in a life insurance policy. So when we look at all three of these types of investment accounts and we look at these over a long time horizon, we can clearly see what ends up being the better account for someone that has a tax rate of 28%. Now, currently the middle tax rate is 24. It used to be 28 for the middle. We're putting a 28 in here so you can kind of see the difference. But it's a absolute no-brainer that the tax-free account takes the cake when it's all said and done, right? Tax deferred right beneath that, and then taxable is actually the one that performs the worst. Why? Because taxes are removed every single year. You've got to pay taxes on dividends, interest, and capital gains. So that is the order that we start to set up in retirement. How do we want to use our assets? Do we want to use tax-free accounts? I mean, I've literally had someone come in for a one-on-one and be like, well, I plan to use my Roth first because it's tax-free and it's just going to be like easy for me to get money out and not have to pay taxes on that. No, no, no. That's backwards. The last account should be the Roth that we're spending, right? That growth is tax-free. All right. It's used only in emergencies to avoid higher tax brackets, meaning like at the end of your life, if you need a huge amount of health care and withdrawing that from a traditional plan would have taxed you on that, okay, you're going to want to take that from a Roth. So like imagine if you have to take a big lump sum distribution from a retirement plan, that's when you might look at your Roth accounts because there's no taxes. It doesn't even show up on your tax return, right? So if we're going to think about the correct order of withdrawals in retirement, we we typically are going to start with our non-retirement assets first, right? We want to use up those accounts. They're not treated as income, but we want to stop the taxation of capital gains, dividends, and ongoing tax liability by using those assets first. Then we're going to go to our traditional accounts. We're going to start using those. One of the reasons also is it helps reduce the required minimum distribution in your mid 70s. By the way, when you're in your 70s, you're going to be required to take out a distribution from your traditional accounts that can oftentimes create taxable issues for you down the road, right? So this is the order that we're going to be targeting for you as a retiree is non-retirement traditional Roth. Lastly, if we do this in correct order, we can see the benefits of actually taking this in correct order. We actually did an example of showing someone taking Roth out first, taxable next, tax deferred last, just to kind of show you an example. And look how much assets you preserve just by taking this in the right order. It's actually really, really important that you understand that because so many people come in with a different idea of what they're going to do. And not only that, what ends up happening is the person that doesn't understand how they're going to use their assets ends up investing these in the wrong way, right? If your intention was that you're going to use Roth first, well, then maybe you have made that more conservative than what it needs to be, and you're allocating your assets inappropriately. So that's a big part of also a sound retirement plan is how this is allocated. I'm going to talk about next. But the other thing is looking at the portfolio, right? Because if we take a large financial loss in retirement, it can be absolutely devastating, right? Absolutely devastating. Folks that retired in 2008, 2009 were devastated to see the damage that was done on their thrift savings plans. And a lot of those folks never really got back to where they were, because the issue that ends up happening, right, is the kind of the 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 dynamic at play is what I'm trying to think of here, is like when you take on a huge loss, you need an even greater gain to get that back. And what we saw in COVID was a big significant downturn, but it popped back up almost immediately, right? But what we saw in '08, what we saw in '01 was another big financial loss. You actually had two major recessions from 2000 to 2010. This is going to be a brutal scenario if a retiree were to go through that, right? So we want to make sure that we're not putting all our eggs in one basket. We're not over diversified to markets when we're heading into retirement, okay? Because of this kind of dynamic of play. And if you're in the camp of, let's say, a 40% loss, right? And your average return is 5% in retirement, it's going to take you 10 years to break even on that loss. It's a big deal, right? So this is a concept that you really got to take to heart if you're rolling the dice and you're set to retire in the next couple of years. Think again a little bit. Think about again about maybe ringing that register and allocating your accounts in a way that is going to weather the storm. Because in retirement, the sequence of returns and how you get returns is so important. Okay. Take a look at someone that has $1 million TSP, right? $1 million TSP, and they're taking 50,000 withdrawals, which is a 5% drawdown. It's actually more than what would be recommended. Usually there's a 4% rule in play. But if this person's getting some significantly good returns at the beginning of their retirement, right? They're going to see a lift to this TSP almost immediately. Okay. So that's a beautiful way to start retirement. 3 massive years, boom, of 20% on the market. Oh, we love that. That's going to set you up for success, especially if you have a booming decade, the wind at your back, you're going to do well in that scenario, right? Things don't look as scary. But what happens if the reverse of that happens, right? You got 1 million going in, you got a $50,000 drawdown, but you meet a 25% down market, your account just jumped to $700,000 in that scenario. And it's going to be real difficult for you to have a comfortable retirement. You're already going to set the precedent for a really, really rocky road for you. And even if we flip this around and give you some excellent returns to kind of round out those last couple of years, it never fully recovers. It just never fully recovers because you started off so poorly. Okay. So it's really, really important for you to understand that, right? That you can't just gamble on your first 2, 3 years of retirement. You must have some sort of idea for how you're going to withdraw in retirement. And so this is how we start to think about our retirement savings, not as all one piece. It's not one piece. And sure, most people understand that, that they have their TSP, they have the G fund, the F fund, S fund, I fund. They understand that. But what they don't really understand is what exactly is the intention behind those investments. Like, let's get really intentional about how you're investing. Okay. You're investing your G fund in other low risk assets for for the money that you're going to be using in those first couple of years of retirement, right? You could say it's a 1 to 3 year horizon that you want your safe money in. You could say that it's all the way up to 5 years that you want your safe money in, right? That just depends on how low risk you want to be. But like, what should be in that bucket addresses those first 3 to 5 years, whatever you're setting up, of withdrawals. So if the market takes an absolute dive and crash, you at least know you're not withdrawing from an account balance that's going down. You're withdrawing from a piece of your portfolio or a sliver of your portfolio that has not lost money, right? Same thing is the midterm, right? But let's go out in the long term. That long term stuff, if we've got our first 3 years or 5 years met by our short term bucket in terms of withdrawals, and then we got our next 4 to 6 years, or we can even go further out from that horizon for folks that want even more security. If we've got those buckets fairly filled, we know we can weather a storm. We can weather a 5 year storm, right? Or 6 year storm. Then really we can start to look at those long-term assets as something that can go up and down with the market. Those are things we're not drawing on for 7, maybe even 10 years for folks that want to be more protected, right? Those are things that this can go up, down, that can go down 30% next year. It doesn't bother me because I'm not drawing on that for 7 to 10 years. And generally, things have crept back up by that time frame, right? Things have crept up by that time frame. So that's how we want you to conceptually understand your investments. Okay. So when we start to look at these different funds, this is where we can kind of figure out where the risks are. So if the risks are more so in these funds like the CS and I, we can start to reduce our exposure and maybe fill up some of the buckets in our GNF fund, right? As we get closer to retirement. Of course, we have the life cycle funds. Those aim to kind of do this for you. But let me get real clear about this. If we're creating a bucket strategy, pull from an asset that has not lost in the market and not touch the assets that have lost money in the market. Let's say we go through a recession in retirement, you know, boom, we're retiring, first year looks pretty okay. Second year, boom, market dive, economy takes a hit, we're in recession. We do not want to be drawing from any of these funds, guys. We want to be drawing out of here or here. The problem that you're going to have in retirement, specifically by using a fund like your L fund or any of these automatic funds, that you cannot select where you're withdrawing from. You can't. So when you're making a withdrawal, they're selling all of these funds in pro rata, percentage wise. And the other issue is that even if you selected your own funds in the TSP and you have your own little portfolio made and you dial up the TSP or you go online and say, hey, I want to pull from my G fund markets down this year, even if you selected your own, they don't do it that way. Don't process your withdrawal that way. They're going to sell off all the funds evenly. Okay. So we start to kind of come into the fact of how are we going to execute a strategy that doesn't sell off my losers or anything that's in a down market through my TSP? At this point in time, through the TSP, it can't be done. So you've got to ask yourself, as you start to move into retirement, how are you going to operate within that strategy? If that doesn't resonate with you, leave it in, right? But this is where you start to think about what your options are in your TSP and the limitations you have. You got some excellent low cost funds as you're accruing wealth, but you start to hit the snags of your TSP when you're operating in retirement using your TSP. This is one of them, and this is something to bring to light if you didn't know that that was an issue. Okay. The other thing that we have to start to talk about in the TSP, specifically traditional, is we got to go back to this RMD. If I didn't make this sound important, let me make it sound important now. When you hit your early 70s, anything that is in traditional must start to come out, must start to come out. And you're talking about a distribution that comes out every year and the percentage increases every year. Okay. This is specifically negatively impactful if you've got a super large TSP and this distribution is pushing you into a higher tax bracket. Because imagine at a 5% withdrawal, which is rule of thumb, what you're going to start seeing in terms of percentages, begins in the fours, then creeps to five, then goes to 6% of your TSP. This is a mandatory distribution. The IRS is essentially at this age saying, hey, you delayed paying us taxes this long. This is where it stops. If you thought you were just going to control your withdrawal in retirement and only take out 30K and having $1 million TSP account, think again. It's gonna be around five and it's gonna go up from there. Okay, 50,000, sorry, 50,000 go up from there. So what is our saving grace? Well, our saving grace is actually the Roth account. The Roth TSP, the Roth IRA, anything Roth has no requirement of withdrawal. So essentially, a Roth plan helps you balance out the required minimum distribution, right? I got half my money in my traditional, half my money in the Roth. I got half the requirement to withdraw from the TSP come my early 70s. That's a beautiful thing because, like I've mentioned, this issue is problematic for most federal retirees. Federal retirees are like very different from the private sector. If I'm a private sector employee, I generally don't have a retirement plan. Sorry, I generally don't have a pension plan. So if you're asking me to take out 5% of my account, well, duh, I only have Social Security. So I absolutely have to take out 5% of my retirement plan. All right. If we're a federal employee, we've got Social Security, knock on wood, hopefully still kicking, giving us what we thought it would. We got our pension, right? In this example, we're already at six figures in retirement income. Now, granted, there's a standard deduction that comes off of this, but if we look at this, right, we would perceive that, all right, I'm going to be good. I'm going to be in a low tax rate in retirement, right? I'm at $76,000 in retirement income. The next bracket goes to 22%, which is a significant jump at $97,000 there. I got about $21,000 of wiggle room before I see a higher tax rate. I'm good. That's the average person that goes in retirement. This is how short-sighted their planning is. So what ends up happening is they've got significant amount of wealth in their TSP. They've got, in this example, a $500,000 account, right? There's going to be growth on that. By the time they turn 73 years old, this balance has grown, typically is what we see. Now the distribution must start, and now we're seeing a higher taxation bracket. All right. Now, this is specifically what we see way more often in the federal space because of this extra layer of income that you have, which is pension. So, are other people impacted that have pensions? Absolutely. But let's be honest, who in the United States has the most amount of pensions? Federal, right? So what ends up then happening is all the capital gains that are short term, all the interest, all the dividends from any other investments then get tacked on at a higher tax rate. This ends up becoming an issue at a time where you thought I was out of the woods on taxes. I never have to worry about tax again. I'm retired, right? Not exactly, right? And the compounding effect to this issue is higher Medicare premiums. So by and large, you're going to, as a federal employee, likely add Medicare Part B to your federal insurance package, right? It provides wraparound coverage, essentially no out-of-pocket expenses in that. But when you add Medicare Part B to your package, you're also paying for it. So not only are you paying for your federal health insurance, you're paying for this Medicare Part B premium. Now, at the first bracket, that's not too bad. $185 per person per month. Not too big of a deal. Kind of sucks, but not gonna cripple me, right? But the issue that we see over and over and over again is Medicare premium spike up in the 70s. Why? Because the RMD is income. The RMD is income. And it was unforeseen. You made a decision to get Medicare Part B based on your initial premium, looked low, and then in your mid 70s, you at $370. I just had someone that $480. It all depends on the size of your TSP now, right? So if you got a joint couple, big money in their traditional TSP, absolutely can see these premium levels spike. So you've got to understand what is happening, right? Come up with a strategy. Don't just go in blind and literally let things happen to you. Go in with a plan of action, see see what the future holds for you, and then start taking action ahead of time. So what we generally see, right, folks do is contributing to Roth IRAs. Why are they contributing to Roth IRAs, or why are they contributing to Roth TSPs? Because it's tax-free growth and there's no RMDs. But when you start to get in a scenario where someone is way over the line in traditional, way into that space, almost all traditional, then you start to see a Roth conversion maybe be the way out for that particular person. And that's because a Roth conversion allows you to transfer assets that was formerly held in a traditional balance that would have had an RMD for you in the future in your 70s. Now you're transferring that over into an after-tax account, which is your Roth, and you are now agreeing to pay the taxes off, which, by the way, could be lower if tax rates rise in the future, and you're reducing your future RMD. That's a Roth conversion. Okay. So you're seeing this more and more and more. Lots of people are doing this right now for multiple reasons, right? Could be they're nervous about tax rate, could be they're nervous about their own size of their TSPs, and then their own income, and it's just overshooting their expenses by a large margin, and all it is just problematic. So what we like to then give you the concept of is, how do you perform a Roth conversion if you were to do one? Well, the way that you properly execute a Roth conversion is you got to look at your tax rate, right? So in this example, we're just using this example, right? We're not going to go and throw other examples of you. So we said that this person was in the 77, or couple was in the $77,000 in income, right? After the deduction in retirement. Okay. They would be in the 12% bracket. So a no-brainer for them would be to make a conversion and keep them within the 20% bracket, 12% bracket. A no-brainer would be to keep them in that bracket. Okay. That would be a no-brainer. So you can take this to your own situation. Oh, you're at the 22% bracket now. You're within 207,000 of income. You're at $170,000 of income. I don't know. I'm just making this up. Okay, you got a $30,000 threshold in your bracket right now to convert at 22%. Why would you do that? Various reasons. But right now, we know that this bracket used to just be 25. That in itself could be ammunition of why you do that. Okay. And then, so what you're setting up for the future by doing a transaction that is a conversion is you're lowering the future amount of traditional assets by sending it to Roth, right? Because it's going somewhere. It's not staying in your traditional, it's going to the Roth. Well, that has now lowered our RMD. Our required distribution was based off the assets that would be there in our mid 70s, but because we sent that out prior to that, we've now lowered our required distribution, and we've now created a distribution that fits within our tax brackets. Hello, that's tax planning. All right, that's tax planning. It doesn't happen by accident. You shouldn't be planning your retirement by accident. It's methodical, it's strategic work that gets you the results that you're looking for and not heading into a potential mistake down the road. And we've set up a tax-free Roth account that can be used for emergencies, that can be used to pass on to children or next of kin, whatever your family, tax-free. Okay. Which doesn't have to be withdrawn in your lifetime. So it can literally be left tax-free. So there is beyond the benefits of just your RMDs, right? When we start talking about the power of Roth in an estate plan, way beyond that. And that's for a much different discussion, which we talk about in our estate planning presentation. But bottom line is if you reside in all the brackets, this is our opinion, all the brackets that are underneath the 32% tax bracket right now, you need to seriously consider what the heck you're doing putting money in traditional. You really think it's going to be lower in retirement? I can almost virtually guarantee you that it's not, right? I can almost virtually guarantee you that it's not. So you have to utilize your Roth accounts at that level. You have to. And these brackets are so expanded that the majority of a majority of federal employees are within those four brackets. So just pay your taxes off as you go. That's a no-brainer. And then if you've overfunded that that traditional portion, this is where we got to look at what is the outcome of this overfunding, right? It can easily be shown. So if you take a proper financial planning software and you're looking at, what the plan is for this retiree, okay, let's say they're retiring at 62. They're going to live off of pension alone, and they're going to withdraw from their savings or their TSP, whatever that is that's in orange in this demonstration. And then at 67, they're going to kick off Social Security. That's going to reduce their withdrawals. They don't really need a whole ton, right? But then at 73, all of a sudden those withdrawals lift off like a rocket. Well, guess what, guys? That's not because you just, started to buy, luxury cars at 73. No, it's because you have to take that money and it's treated as income. Okay. So that's the first tell in anyone's retirement plan. Do we see something that just excessively jumps off because of rules, IRS rules, not because of own personal spending? And then what we got to look at is what is that doing to not only our tax brackets, what is that doing to our Medicare brackets? And we can easily forecast those Medicare brackets too. We can forecast those into time to see how these distributions lift us up into other Medicare premium brackets. And then, by the way, we can start to make the decision ahead of time. Either we're going to need to convert or we're not going to go on Medicare Part B to begin with because we're not going to pay $500, $600 a month for Medicare Part B each, me and my spouse. We're just not doing that. So we'd rather save the money ahead of time, knowing what our decision is going to be on that. So we got to figure these out way ahead of time so we can start making decisions about our retirement that are going to that it's going to affect us down the road, that need to be items we need to take action on now. So what are the items that we generally need to take action on now? These items. These are probably the most important items in terms of questions that you're going to need to answer for a proper financial planning discussion. And these are what we help clients and folks work through. So if you're in the camp right now that says, yeah, I understand this stuff, but I really do need like someone to talk about it through, this is what we have our financial checkup for. So our financial checkup is generally about an hour session, and it's held on a Zoom meeting. The uh, the financial checkup is a complimentary meeting. This is a kind of a overview or a higher level overview to get some of these questions answered, right? To just go through these components of your retirement plan. You can sign up for a one-on-one meeting by picking out your your iPhone, if you have one, or smartphone, and scanning this QR code and just hitting that like button that will flash the website. Or if you're on your computer, you could go right to our website. From there, you're going to get the capability of registering for this one-on-one meeting. Now, just so you know, guys, it's we're backed up. Okay, so if you if this is a high priority thing for you to do it today. Okay, because there is a wait time of about 6 to 8 weeks going on right now, and that's actually getting magnified. So I would just recommend, if this is high priority, go ahead, sign up for that one-on-one. Lastly, I'm going to give you our YouTube channel for you to subscribe to, because what we're doing is we're putting out videos like this. This is a 1 hour session, but we're putting out mini clips on certain topics, Medicare, Social Security, whatever it is, putting that on our YouTube channel. But this is a great resource, because in retirement, guys, you're going to have some delays to your income. This is literally what OPM will send you when you're in retirement. Okay. This is actually taken from them. And you can tell exactly when the timeline is and what you got to do, when you got to do it, when it's signing up for social or Medicare, but then ultimately what the delay is on those annuity and pension checks, etc. So this is a great resource. We threw it in there. Lastly, when you're looking for a financial planner, please look at their background. You can do so by checking this site, Broker Check, which is operated by FINRA. You can look at a couple things. What are their disclosures? Do they have complaints, okay, about them? That will show up there. But more importantly, if this person starts to give you investment advice and you are trying to make sure that's fiduciary advice, they have to be a registered investment advisor. If they're not a registered investment advisor, then the only way they can make money is by selling you commissionable products. That's a hard stop. 2, check for certifications. Okay. CFPs, all those are great certifications to have, because they up the level of ethical requirements and they up the level of continuing education that that planner has to receive to keep those licenses alive. 3, background federal employees. They don't need to be a chartered benefits consultant. They don't. But they got to have experience working with federal employees. They got to know the issues that you guys go through in retirement to foresee those issues and give you proper planning and advice. So it's not oh darn, I didn't know that. Oh, I had no idea that. Oh, I thought your health insurance was all you needed. I didn't know that there was even a Medicare decision point in this whole thing. Okay, so these are things that really is specific to the federal side of things, as well as your pension, the tax issue we already talked about. So here is the sign up for the one-on-one again, okay, which is below. Feel free to do that. But additionally, you want to educate yourself as this year goes on. This is our absolute uh, bread and butter place where you could go and get the education all year round. Every week, we're posting educational content there. We're doing an every 2 month market commentary to give you some tips on adjusting your TSP portfolios if you're still working or you still have years that you're going to be working and contributing those TSPs. Every 2 months, we're doing a commentary on the state of the markets, state of the bond markets, all that, inflation. So follow us there. That will get you more education. And if you're in the camp where it's like, I need beyond just general guidance, I need one-on-one guidance, that's in the camp of that one-on-one meeting, which is the QR code there. So for this video, it's going to be posted on our YouTube channel. If you can't tell, our initiative is to get our subscribers up. We just launched that channel last year. We feel like we're playing catch up. So one way that you can, support us is helping us lift that subscriber amount on that YouTube channel. That would be very much appreciated, because as you know, YouTube will essentially ignore you if you don't have people subscribing to your channel and liking your videos. It just is the way it works. And when you're in this kind of phase of getting that channel going, you need all the support you can get. So thank you so much, guys, for staying on me to the end. I mean, so many of you guys did, and that means that hopefully you were learning. You just weren't tuning out, and you were learning. And I really hope that this was educational, and that you picked up on some new things that you never thought about before. That's the intent of these sessions. I'm not here to tell you stuff you already know. I'm here to tell you stuff that you don't know that can later cost you down the road. So with that being said, let's look at your questions. I see them coming in by the droves. I'm at 20 now. I'm gonna do my best to answer them. I'm gonna do my best. If we can't get to all, then please, we've got the one-on-ones and all those things. But let's tackle these. Let's go after them one by one. And I'm gonna go back to the beginning. Now, I'm not gonna answer questions that I already know I answered throughout the presentation, so I'm just gonna skip those. First question comes from Kim. Kim, capital gains are currently taxed at 15%, not 28%. Correct, Kim, but short-term capital gains are taxed at your income tax rate. So Kim, if a fund distributes a gain from your taxable account that that was within those 12 months or less, like a mutual fund was sold or there was just a distribution out of it, that's going to get to pick up the short-term capital gain bracket, which is income tax brackets. In order for a capital gain to receive the 15% tax rate, that's got to be held for over a year in terms of assets, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, and so on and so forth. Next question is, given the huge RMD expected at 75, would you recommend tapping into the tax preferred bucket simultaneously with the taxable bucket? Great question. So it's very individual based, right? It's got to come through a financial plan, honestly, to give you what the percentage of what you're going to use first. Our preference when we're doing our financial plans is, if this is a problem, we've got a couple options, right? We can use, in your point, tax deferred assets first, not reducing those, right? So that we don't have a big RMD. We can do a list of things, right? We can use taxable accounts that generally don't get treated as income and convert to Roth. Might be even a better option because we don't want the taxable accounts growing that much either, because those distribute income, cap gains, and so forth. So that's probably our likely best option. But second, like, we can play with all things in the financial plan. Like, what happens if we delay Social Security, right? Delay it till 67 or 70. Why would we do that? Would we just do that for the gain of income later? No, we might want a really reduced income in retirement, at least your first couple of years, so we can get as much done as possible at lower taxation brackets and then start that income later, right? So there's just so many ways to kind of skin the cat on a retirement plan. And it's really just going to come down to your individual scenario, right? And the financial checkup is what gets the ball moving on building out that financial plan. Okay. So next question. I was led to understand to put my money in Roth due to my age at the time was a less than helpful situation, but to me, it sounds like it would still be a good idea, at least for some of my funds, which are low even now. Yeah, we're a big, if you haven't, felt that through the presentation, we're really big, firm believers at Roth if you're underneath the 32% bracket. If you're in the 32% bracket, then we got to talk, right? We got to look at, okay, 32 is it what it is now? What is it in retirement? Because if it is true that it's less, then we'd want to use traditional in 32. But if it's not true that it's less, then we might still hug on to some Roth. So again, a lot of folks are ending up in that 24 or less right now. Dwayne, will we get a recording? Yeah, I already said that. Some of us will have 8 to 9 years in the TSP, not 35 to 25. What advice are you focused on for older employees who have less than 3 years before they might retire? Well, Dwayne, I think I addressed that. I've given a lot here. If there's something specific that I haven't covered, please let me know. Um, Lisa, I once had a retirement brief that said invest 40% C, 40 S, 20 I. Then 10 years prior to retirement, put it in G, 10% in G. Lisa, it ain't that simple. You know what I mean? We got to look at what your expenses are in retirement. Do you have any other lump sum expenses? Are you buying a car? Are you, paying for a child's wedding or whatever? And then we got to be building a short-term bucket, a midterm bucket, and a long-term bucket, right? We got to be intentional. It's not just like random percentages. It's like, hey, I'm putting this in to cover this phase of my life. I'm putting this here to cover this phase of my life. And then everything else is the like long-term phase. That's how we're going to figure this out. It's not just numbers we're pulling out of presentations. It's really about getting intentional of what our retirement plan looks like. Next question is, how can we specify which fund to pull from in our traditional TSP? Doesn't it take out proportionally from all the funds in the portfolio? Yes, I alluded to this. Even though you don't use an L fund, because L funds, you absolutely can't control what you're withdrawing from. But even though you don't use one, you still can't control what you're withdrawing from. And to be honest, that's one of the biggest drawbacks of the TSP in retirement. Like, I want to be careful how I position this, right? Because I don't want to be on the TSP. I think it's an excellent account for building wealth. It's very simple. It's very low cost. Like, let's put all the pros in there so I don't look like I'm the guy just talking about con. But this is a serious con, right? It's a serious con for someone that's in retirement that's trying to strategize how they're going to be withdrawing funds. And when a plan says, no, you can't do that, we're just going to sell off everything proportionately, then you run into issues of, getting caught in a down market and the problems that that creates on the investments. Next question is, RMD not required if still working after retirement age? Okay, so someone asks, is the RMD not required if I'm still working? So you mean you're working into your 70s? Yes, there's people that do that. And yes, that's a long career. And you're absolutely right. If you are still working in your 70s, you do not have to take out the required distribution. Okay, you only have to take it out if you're retired and hit that age. And the same is true, by the way, guys, for that Medicare Part B decision. If you're 65 and still working, you technically do not have to get onto Medicare Part B, meaning there will be no penalty that arises for delaying that decision. You would be in what's called the special enrollment period, which would then begin uh, picking at the moment you retire, and you would have 8 months to make that decision. So there's a couple little outliers. Good pickup there. Julie, I thought my federal medical it kept is my Medicare Part B. How is this wrong? I thought my federal medical, if kept, is my Medicare. I think you need to rephrase that question, Julie. I need very clear questions. Uh, Julie, do we need Medicare Part C? This is hard to understand. No, you don't need Medicare Part C, but Medicare Part B is a promoted way to go by OPM. Promoted. I'm gonna put it that way. And I want to say that it's promoted, that it's what you do. Like if you go to your benefits counselor at the end and you're turning in your papers to retire, they're going to tell you get Part B. They're going to tell you to get Part B because from a liability standpoint, it makes sense. You're getting wraparound coverage. You're getting the most health type of wraparound coverage you could possibly get with your FHB and Part B. But again, do they know your TSP balance? Do they know your other income? Do they know how much you'll pay for Part B before they tell you to do that? No. So you've got to look at all of it together and make that decision for yourself. And that's got to come from math, figures, dollars, cents, risk, right? You need a planner that is going to to put that in a way so you understand it. So from a financial standpoint and from a risk standpoint, what are you doing? Either not getting the Medicare Part B to yourself or getting it, right? And then you could start make decisions. Okay, get educated first, and that's not just a, oh yeah, you should get that. I'm promoting that if you're in first Medicare bracket, even the second, it probably makes sense to get. But when you start to get outside of that, that's where you've got to put the brakes on and say, okay, what am I going to pay for this benefit? What am I receiving? Lisa, how do Medicare Part B, when you have TRICARE for life, do you still have to pay for Medicare premium? Do you still need coverage for long-term custodial care? Oh, Lisa, TRICARE, great insurance, but guess what? Unlike FEHB, TRICARE, TRICARE makes you get Medicare Part B. There's no decision. You must get Medicare Part B, and you must get Medicare Part B as soon as you turn 65, whether you're working or not. So it's different for TRICARE. Okay. So you must get Medicare Part B. So you better pay extra attention to what's in your traditional TSP because you don't want to get set into higher Medicare premiums. Okay. Do you still need coverage in long-term care custodial care? Yeah. Once your Medicare A runs out, which is 90 days, uh, I got to double check how much custodial care it is. Once that runs out, you're gonna pay. And Medicare Part B and your FHB don't cover custodial care. So you get it through Medicare Part A, but it's limited. All right. Next question. Is it better to not get Medicare Part B and just use federal medical because Medicare becomes primary if you have both Fed and health? How many docs don't take Medicare? Great question. Okay, so just coming back to this, she's asking, is it better to get Medicare Part B or is it not? It comes to a cost issue, it comes to a risk issue. We got to do the computations and math to see what you're going to end up paying for this benefit. Okay. Then from there, we got to figure out what risk level are we taking by not getting it. Does it make sense to not go on Medicare, and then maybe if we have to come back and pay the penalty, right? So there's a whole cost benefit analysis that needs to be done on that decision, right? Because that's another option too. Like just because you don't take Medicare Part B doesn't mean you can't ever get it back, but you have to pay a penalty. Well, how much are you saving in those years that you're not taking it? You have FHB, and then God forbid you got to go back on and get Medicare Part B later on to pay this penalty. Well, you're going to pay a higher amount for the rest of your life, but you saved on this whole other phase of your life. Where's the break even? So, like, again, it comes to risk and coverage, but it also comes to math, right? And we can help you on both sides to make that decision. Amy, is it my understanding that you can convert a traditional to Roth prior to the 70+ year age mandatory distribution? Yeah, yeah, that's what we talked about. It's a Roth conversion. You cannot do a Roth conversion until you turn 59 and a half from the TSP, just FYI. So you got to be of age to do a Roth conversion. Brianna, so should we just have a Roth account for retirement if we were just starting out? Yes. Just do Roth. Let's get real basic for you. If you're just starting out, Roth, because the biggest issues that arrive are from people that have traditional. All right. YouTube channel for our presentation. So I'm getting us asked that question a lot. YouTube, sign up for our YouTube. You'll get the recording on there. You'll get the slides. We can send you the slides, by email. Julie, do you have just planning advice, not ongoing and not with annuities? Absolutely. We don't promote products like annuities. We don't promote those in terms of our planning advice. So absolutely, you can sign up for your one-on-one. Then you can, from there, if you want planning sessions, purchase those, and that's exactly how that ends up going. Okay, Kathleen. Oh my, yeah, this is like a foreign language to me. I need a financial advisor ASAP that is familiar with government presentations. Please send me the direct info. I'm single. I will be 65 in June and plan to retire in 2025. Kathleen, I hope you hung on to our QR code because your information isn't going to save in this chat box. Okay. So please reach out to us. Please sign up for your one-on-one because essentially I'm not going to have this info you put in on this chat. Okay. Um, but we would love to help you. Elizabeth, you're welcome. All right. Thank you for the comment and always appreciate that. One of the best presentations on retirement you've seen. Thank you. Oh, that makes me feel very good. Can we get a copy of the presentation? Yep. So slides go out by email. Recording gets posted to YouTube. Mary Lou, what is the YouTube site? Can't do by phone. Oh, darn. Okay. So the YouTube site is Capital Financial Planners. All right. You can also put in Capital Financial Planners on YouTube and put in RET Fed, RET Fed. But our channel name is Capital Financial Planners. But if you search those, our channel should come up. Right now, we're about 900 subscribers. Hopefully, going on 1,000 after this meeting. But that's how you'll find us. You'll find our direct channel. You'll see me all over that channel too. All right. Can you just contribute to your Roth TSP and skip traditional? Will the agency match any of this? Oh, such a good late question. So this question is, if I only fund my TSP Roth, am I still going to get my agency match? So there's like this myth that is around the federal government that thinks that if they don't do traditional, that they're not going to get the match. And it's because the agency sends your matching deposit to your traditional account. Think about that for a second, right? They're not going to give you tax-free money. Any benefit that they give you is taxable. Any income that they give you is taxable, and like this is income, right? So they're going to put it in your traditional balance. But are they not going to match that 5% if you don't put anything traditional? No. You could do every penny to your Roth. They're going to send the 5% match to your traditional balance. So that's what happens. So essentially, guys, you're going to be building a traditional balance of your TSP2 inherently through the match, because that's where that's going to go. Great question. I have this in a slide deck on another presentation, but it was a good one for this presentation too. Please give examples of non-retirement assets again. Brokerage accounts, stock accounts, E-Trade, Robinhood, all that stuff where you have just kind of investments that are non-retirement. Uh, you know, those are your likely candidates, but also savings accounts, money market accounts, generate interest that aren't retirement. That's taxable income, interest income as well. Ooh, okay. We'll have to do a cutoff at some point because we're gonna have to do a cutoff at 1:30. Okay, so I'm gonna try to get as much questions answered before then. Because they keep coming in, and I love questions, but thank you for sharing your expertise. Oh, awesome. You're welcome. So let me go to the ones that I think are really big highlights. Someone has a personal question, about what they're putting in their TSP. I'm not going to answer that on this format. That's for your one-on-one. But I'm going to answer general questions. All right. So we're going to skip to the ones that are general. Is the 23,000 cap total for the Roth IRA outside of the federal TSP? For example, if I have a separate Roth IRA that caps out at 6,000, can I only invest 17,000 in the TSP Roth? Great question. Okay. So this person is asking, do the limits to the outside Roth IRA have any interaction with my limits inside my TSP Roth? The answer is no. You can put every bit of your 23,000 plus the additional catch up, which is like 7,500 now or something like that, right? Which is 30,000 or 30,500. I got to double check those, right? All to TSP Roth. Never mind what the limits are outside of the TSP. That does not speak to the TSP Roth. Okay. Roth IRA contribution limits are completely separate. And even if you fund one outside of the TSP to the $7,000 limit, has no bearing on the TSP Roth contribution as well. You can max completely out all the way up to 23 or 30,000 plus and have no ties between the two. Okay. Just pay attention to the Roth IRA income limits. But again, those IRA income limits don't apply to the Roth TSP. They don't talk. Okay. All right. Someone just straight out flat out ask if I only contribute to traditional. Is it too late to consider contributing to Roth? No. Now, likelihood you're gonna have to make Roth conversions to like correct yourself because you're probably way overbalanced and you're staring at the barrel of an issue in retirement when those distributions start. But no, it's not too late. Start now. Uh, okay, I address so some of these questions I've already addressed through other questions, so I'm going to skip ahead. Um, so Alexa, I answered that question already. Why not just withdraw from your TSP and then rebalance so that you withdraw from specific funds? That way you can achieve the same result as withdrawing from specific funds. So this person has an idea, and that is not a terrible idea that you're discussing. So they're basically saying, why not withdraw and then rebalance? Withdraw and then rebalance. But then you're getting into an issue of if you rebalance just the way it is, you're essentially rebalancing to the allocation, which essentially means that the withdrawal that you did just gets rebalanced back to the same allocation. You would have to create a whole new allocation every single time you withdrew. And for people that are making like monthly withdrawals from their, like, let's be honest, guys, when you're in retirement, you're going to want to receive probably a monthly check from your retirement plan, right? You're going to want to see that, kind of feel that like as income, like to change that up every single time and get that right. Um, there's just better ways of doing it. Okay. This person is talking about the issue that the fact that when you withdraw from your TSP in retirement, you can't choose what you withdraw from. And he's trying to come up with the method that would still get that job done. And I hear that, but it's just not the same. It's going to be very cumbersome to do that. Lisa, can we transfer our TSP funds to another place when we retire to have another financial advisor company manage that? Absolutely, you can do that, right? So there are many, many financial institutions, many financial advisors that will help you with that, right? My suggestion is to work with a advisor that is a registered investment advisor if you're going to be going down that road. Because if you don't, and they're not a registered investment advisor, you're giving your money into the hands of someone that is running a commissionable transactional portfolio, and you do not want that. They're going to be utilizing investments that generate commissions, and they're likely going to lead with products like annuities and things like that that you just got to steer a hard left from. All right. So if anything you're taking away is that in that answer. Um, Julie, current medical is Blue Cross. Do I still need Medicare? Oh, um, so the question is, Julie is stating what her FEHB Viter is, which is Blue Cross Blue Shield. And the question is, do I need Medicare Part B to keep that? And the answer is no. You can have Blue Cross Blue Shield into retirement. In fact, you're going to. But the question is, do you accept and add Medicare Part B to this mix? And there's a lot to this decision. Okay. One thing that you got to be aware of is if you do not get Medicare Part B in retirement as a federal employee, your FEHB will only pay up to the Medicare approved amount. Might not have known that. Right now, they'll pay pretty much whatever minus the co-payments. But in retirement, they're going to say, oh, you had a decision to make Medicare Part B and you opted not to save money. Well, our coverage is going to stop at what Medicare Part B would have actually paid out. So there's a risk, right? So again, you don't know this stuff. It's not all part of this presentation. You're pulling it out of me now, but this is what your one-on-one's for. Okay. So this is something that you've got to get in your thinking cap, especially if you're getting close to retirement. All right. Any general thoughts on federal employees under FERS retiring when they first become eligible at 57? Uh, aggressive TSP contributions and top of the GS scale. The general thoughts are if you retire at 57, you're not going to get a cost of living adjustment until 62. 5 years of your pension literally staying the same and expenses going up. And we we sort of seen how high expenses can go in 5 years since COVID, haven't we? So I would just be concerned about that part, but I am no way in shape or form trying to talk you off a ledge of retiring at 57 if you've saved enough money and you've got enough firepower in your TSP and all that stuff to do it. So, but just be aware of the risks. All right, where we are in time, we're coming up on the end here. If I retire at 70 and decide to carry my FHB into retirement, do I still need a? Okay, I've addressed that. I've addressed as much I think I'm going to be able to address on this, and then it's going to just start going into your own personal, strategy around this. Benjamin, I have 30 years into retirement. Is it too early to start? I've addressed that. Julie, you're welcome. Greg asks, can you continue converting to Roth while in retirement? Yes, but when you hit your RMD age in your mid 70s, very difficult to do because you're already withdrawing a required amount from your traditional. And then on top of that, you're going to withdraw an amount from your Roth. One sidebar to this, guys, is when your required minimum distribution starts from your traditional, one of the really bad aspects of it is if it's over what you need for spending. We already talked about the tax brackets and Medicare brackets. But like, there's been people that are like, all right, well, I'll just convert that part to Roth. No, you cannot convert your RMD to Roth. The whole point of the RMD is to send money out of a retirement plan and have you invest that in a taxable plan and tax you on those dividends, interest, and earnings. So if your desire or your strategy is, I want to get the Roth done, then your timeline is really ends at your RMD age. And that's how much time you got. Because you're likely not going to be able to convert and do that mandatory withdrawal that can't go to Roth. All right. Yeah, you guys are welcome. I'm getting a lot of Randy, thank you. Appreciate that. Next question. 60% of my TSPs are Roth remaining bound, blah, blah, blah. This is a personal question, okay? You got to come in for a one-on-one to get any allocation advice because I can't just give it blankly. Everyone's different. I mean, I think you've kind of understood that from this Medicare Part B question that I've already kind of addressed. Randy, thank you. Tracy, we'll have to address that. You're talking about buyback. We'll have to address that at a different time if you have some concerns around that. On your one-on-one would be a great place to do it. Steve asks, is it true if you select Medicare Part B with your FHB becomes supplemental and you do not have to get supplemental? Absolutely. So to Steve's point, in a scenario where you elect Medicare Part B and you take that on, Medicare becomes primary and your FEHB becomes secondary. So essentially, Medicare will pay up to the Medicare approved amount. Anything additional will be covered by FHB. Medicare only pays 80% of your bills, so FEH will be paid the 20% and vice versa. That's what will give you that wraparound coverage. That's why we say it's probably worth it to do in that first bracket. But as you start to pop out of brackets higher than that, that's where we gotta start to figure out it. What's the worth? Um, all right, we're kind of getting some of the same questions. Blah, blah, blah. If I sell, all right. Thank you. I wish I've seen this years ago. I'm sorry. We have been presenting for a while, but I guess the word didn't get out. Julie, you're welcome and thank you for that. All right. So is it this is golden info, not no Roth limits. Yes, no Roth limits. 23,000, baby, put it all in Roth. You can do that. All right. If you have a TSP loan, do they withdraw it from your balance when you retire, or do you just get a 1099? Tracy, this is a new rule that the federal government started, which was last year, that if you have an outstanding TSP loan, you can actually go into it with retirement and pay it as you normally would. It would be taken out of your pension, and you don't have to pay it off, and you don't get a 1099 for it. You can actually take that into retirement. That is a brand new rule. Uh, Cindy, still working at 68, not eligible for Roth IRA due to income limits. Should I still contribute to traditional IRA? Cindy, I've got a I've got a thought for you. Don't think about contributing to Roth IRA, Cindy, at 68. Think about converting to Roth IRA. What have you put in traditional in your TSP that is creating excess distributions for you and so forth that are going to create higher tax rates or Medicare premiums? Don't think about contributing anymore at 68. Think about converting at 68. And let me tell you this, if you think that you can't convert TSP to Roth because you're over the income limits, you've misunderstood the definition of a contribution and the definition of a Roth conversion. There is no income limitation to a Roth conversion. The income limitation and the $7,000 cap that sits on a Roth contribution to a Roth IRA only is to a contribution. So even though you're capped at what you can contribute to a Roth IRA, forget that. That's negligible. You need to be thinking about converting to TSP, a TSP from TSP to Roth, and utilizing the contribution you would have made as a tax payment to clear the taxes on that conversion. And you're going to net way more dollars into your Roth by converting it than making that $7,000 contribution to the Roth IRA in the first place, even if you could. That's called leverage, Cindy. And that is proper financial planning advice. All right. I said I was leaving at 1:30. I'm sticking around because you guys are worth it, and you guys, hung with me. Okay. So Sherry, when you would advise to sell, okay, that's kind of like a not properly stated question. Sell off real estate if acquired for retirement. When would you advise to sell off real estate? That's an individual question. Okay, we gotta look at when it's more advantageous to you. Randy, does the TSP Roth 5-year penalty-free withdrawal period count for outside Roth IRA 5-year waiting period? It depends. If you contributed to your Roth, that has a 5-year waiting period from when you started the Roth account. If you convert to your Roth, it's got a 5-year waiting period from each batch of conversions. But let's be honest, Randy, you shouldn't be using your TSP Roth or your Roth in the first 5 years of retirement. You shouldn't. It should be your traditional. Roth is gonna be the last thing you use. So I'm not as concerned with those 5-year limits or waiting periods, to be honest with you. If you want to get into the nitty-gritty of that, though, we can. What external investments outside of the TSP would you look at to diversify while still working? I can't just blankly give like investment advice on these type of presentations, you know what I mean? It's a liability issue, especially, outside of your TSP. This is about the TSP, or sorry, this is about you being a federal employee, so we're gonna stick to, you know, things inside TSP and stuff, not like outside. All right. So we're just clearing through, just chomping at these questions. Chomp, 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 chomp. All right. All right. Final question is where we're at. All right. No more. I can't. So I see the last question there. No, anything that comes off the bell off that last one, just I can't. I gotta go into another meeting at 2. I'm 58. I've been told by financial advisor it's too early to convert my traditional to Roth. Yes, it's too early. You have to be 59 and a half, make any sort of conversion to Roth. So your the advisors advise you on that is correct. Is the RMD rate 12%, Stephen? No, it's about it's a 4.5% and goes up every single year. Okay. Brianna, if our match from the government goes to traditional, when should we use a Roth conversion to transfer the money to Roth? As early as 59 and a half, right? She's basically saying, well, if my money goes into traditional from my agency match, like when can I get that back over to my Roth? It would be 59 and a half. Are there limits to a Roth conversion in a given year? No, there's no limits. But we gave you a strategy of how you should think about doing it. Don't bust your tax bracket because, again, if you convert to Roth, it's treated as income. And if your tax bracket can only handle a certain amount before it would go into another tax bracket, that's kind of your limit, most likely, for the Roth conversion is to stay within your tax bracket. Now, if you want to utilize, if you're in 22 all the way up to 24, it's only a 2% difference, right? But we sure as heck would be going to 32% to make a conversion. All right, last and final question. This will be the 65th question answered, and it comes from Tracy. I am confused how to convert Roth TSP from traditional TSP while still employed because I've always heard and just looked at it and it says you cannot do that. Yes, you're right, Tracy. In order to convert traditional to Roth, you've got to be 59 and a half and you got to do it outside of your TSP to an outside Roth IRA. It's an external transaction, external. So you can't do it internally. Another con of the TSP, right, at the moment. So that is it. You guys were awesome. All 90 of y'all that hung on to the end, I rewarded you with an extension of our question Q&A. So you guys get a reward for that, right? How could I leave you guys hanging? I'm not going to do that. All right. So much love. Thank you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you all learned something new. Come see us. Pour that love out on our YouTube channel. Subscribe to us. Like our videos. All that helps. We're trying to get to as many federal employees as possible. It's, so much out there in terms of federal employees that just don't know about us. And we're trying to attack that from a YouTube standpoint at this point. So take care.